Hello. So I was recently listening to a podcast about diabetes, and the topic was diabetes and mental health. Basically, the base of the discussion was a recent study that highlighted that people with type 1 diabetes have to take 180 decisions daily, only concerning diabetes management, and that is one of the biggest sources of mental stress and mental issues for people with type 1 diabetes, because when you are forced to make so many additional decisions, to be so observational and concerned about each and every action that you do, essentially, that can cause some mental issues, some additional stress that maybe some people are not able to cope with, and that is even made even heavier by the fact that people with diabetes are essentially living their daily life as a performance, because if you think about it, you are tracking your nutrients, you are tracking your dosages, so it's numbers, then you're calculating a ratio, and you are adjusting your dosages depending on how much you're eating, how much you're not eating, and all of that produces an immediate result. You have an immediate feedback, which is essentially reflected in your blood glucose level. If you have a continuous glucose monitor, you know that each action that you take will have an effect. And if you're not on top of this process, you're not constantly there grinding the numbers and making the calculations and making the right decision, then it can be a problem. And of course, these problems are it's a very loud street. So for type 1 diabetes, there are problems that are seen by the person living with the condition. So the the high blood glucose, for example, or the low blood glucose. But then there are many others that are not seen, and these are the things that people without diabetes cannot really consider, cannot really see and take into consideration, because, for example, a person with diabetes will not always be able to eat when they want or what they want. Many times in the past I had to wake up at 3 a.m. and eat sugar because my blood glucose was low, and I was awakened by the sound of my blood glucose monitor signaling me that the blood glucose was very low, and that impacts my sleep, and that impacts my mood and productivity the day after at work. And then, for example, maybe you get your dosage wrong at breakfast, you go low during the morning at work or while studying, and all of a sudden you find yourself unable to work effectively, because you cannot keep the focus, because your brain is working only at half capacity, and you are not really into social interactions because you're stressed, and all of these things compound on each other, and they can really tax one's mental one's mental health in the short term and in the long term. So as I was saying, diabetes can be and especially living your life, if you address your life as a performance, as a daily performance, because you want to hit a good numbers for timing range, you want to keep your dosage low, insulin dosage low, you know, and then you have to schedule your workouts, schedule how you're gonna work, when you need to be focused, and reverse engineer everything in order to be there, be performant, be able to perform on that moment. Then yeah, it can be complicated, especially if you are not addressing diabetes, you know, as if you are addressing diabetes as an obstacle in all this. And so basically, yeah, diabetes is to some extent a performance, because you have, as I was saying, you have to deal with the numbers daily. You cannot escape that. But it really depends on how you frame it, in my opinion, because I've been living with diabetes for more than a decade. I run every day, not every day, but 4 or 5 times a week. I run, you know, long distance running, and when I do not run, I walk around the place. I'm very active. I do physical activity, I do a mentally demanding job, I write, I read, so I want to be there, you know, performing mentally. But I never saw diabetes being an obstacle in all this, and I'll explain you why. Because you see, if I pretended that I didn't want to have diabetes, then of course that would be, you know, a daily struggle to overcome an obstacle. But if I welcome diabetes, and that was, you know, the decision I made on day one with this condition, I welcome this condition, then, you know, everything else becomes an automation. And it requires some discipline, but you know, this discipline then becomes ingrained in your day, and you don't even acknowledge it anymore. You don't even notice that it's there. So for me, yes, I log the food every day, every meal. I count my carbohydrates. I count the grams of fats that I'm eating. I calculate my carb-to-insulin ratio, for example, and I adjust my dosage based on, you know, the amount that I'm going to eat. Now, you could see this process as a very, you know, oh my god, I have to sit there, make the calculation, and then only then I can eat. Or you can say, all right, you know, that's how it is, and you know, just as you have to, you know, lace up your shoes and go out for running even when it rains in order to run a marathon, you also have to, you know, take a few seconds to just do the math, log the numbers, and figure out how much you need in order to nail your injection. And you know, once you see that this process is yielding good results, because when you do things intentionally and based on the math, then your blood glucose levels will be in range most of the time, because you're doing things based on some logic. Then that is rewarding, that is encouraging, that helps you stick with the process. And when things do not work the way you want, maybe you have some blood glucose problems, or I don't know, logging things and tracking them with pen and paper helps you figure out why. But if you do this as an automation, like, all right, I have to eat, I will just, you know, take a couple of minutes, log in my things. It's a very small action. Doesn't take much time, but it helps you in the long term and also in the short term. But you know, it gives you a process that you can use. And yes, it's still a performance to some extent, but you know, it's a necessary one. And it's not that you become enslaved by the condition doing this way, because one could say, yeah, I mean, you are, you know, constantly there calculating things. Sometimes you are not even going out at restaurants with your friends or colleagues, because you know, the food that they serve in restaurants always has like the dangerous combination of processed carbs and fats with oils and stuff, and those are not good for blood glucose management. So you know, one could see this as being enslaved by diabetes, because you cannot eat out most of the time. You have to, you know, calculate, and you know, it can be boring sometimes. But in my opinion, this is not being enslaved, this is being in control. Because the other face of the medal is, if you do not do this, then if you, for example, do not take the time to log your food, to make the calculations, and to, you know, do things intentionally and with data driving your decisions, then what happens is that you are injecting random amounts. You go low, for example, during a work meeting, during your run, your workout, during your study session, and all of a sudden you are not able to study, work, run anymore, because the diabetes is getting in the middle, and your long-term health will be badly hurt by this. That to me sounds more like being enslaved by the condition. And yeah, just one thing, I was mentioning that I do not go out at restaurants. That's my choice. Doesn't have to be that the same for everyone, but in my opinion, my long-term health is much more important than, you know, the short reward of highly processed food. And you know, many restaurants have very healthy options, but they always come with, you know, the combination of, like, even a vegan pizza. I'm vegan, I'm plant-based, but even a vegan pizza is still processed carbs with, you know, some kind of oil or fat component like cashew cheese or stuff, and those things do have an impact on your glycemic control in the long term and in the short term. So to me, that, you know, eating those things, for how tasty they can be, is not worth the problems that they generate. The problems that they generate for me for days on end. And so I simply choose not to consume them. Again, it doesn't have to be that way, that's my choice, but I chose not to compromise on my health for, you know, any reason. There are some occasions, but those are, I can count them on the fingers on one hand, like 5 occasions a year where I'm gonna maybe eat or allow myself to, you know, not follow my plan. And for me, this is not like a cost. This is not a struggle like, oh my god, I have to do this and I'm not enjoying my life. I enjoy my life. I eat what I love to eat, what I know it's healthy to eat, but I train myself over time to do that. I train myself over time to do that, and the discipline required for me to stick to the process, so eating healthy, not eating at restaurants, counting my carbs, counting my dosages, my insulin units, calculating the ratios. All of the things are just a part of my day. I don't feel them anymore, but I don't feel them. I don't feel that they are a struggle for me, something else I have to do. But that is because I have a clear purpose, a clear reason for this, which is my long-term health. So once I set that priority, the top priority, everything else just becomes easy, because I know what I need to do and I will just do it. So this is not for me living life as a performance, because I have simply accepted the works that needs to be done for me to be healthy, and I simply do it, no problem. Just like, you know, if I want to run a marathon, I know I need to train. Some days it rains, some days it's cold, hot, I still go out and train. Same things with diabetes. I know I want to be healthy long term, and I log my things. I do what's required day in and day out. And I get it, it can be mentally taxing at times, and that is why I have like my daily mental escapes, or like mental vacations, as I call them. Oh, look at this. People going on ice skates. I have my mental vacations on a daily basis that help me stay on track, to decompress a bit. I never run with music or podcasts. I run, you know, following my breath and paying attention to, you know, the sound of my foot on the landing on the ground. I meditate, I write, I read. So I have these moments, or I just, you know, walk in silence.
Okay.
Look how beautiful this is. I'm not walking in silence, but I'm walking, you know, in a beautiful environment. And I use these moments to, you know, just reflect, think, slow down, breathe, and this help. And then seasonally, I also take like longer breaks. For example, during the holiday season, Christmas, New Year's, I was with my family, and I intentionally partially stopped logging everything. I just, you know, selected a meal plan, quote unquote, that was easy to follow, that was predictable. So pretty much always the same breakfast, pretty much always the same lunch and dinner. So I knew pretty much how much I needed to inject without having to calculate everything. How I knew the amounts that I was eating, and I knew pretty much the ratio that I needed to apply to nail my dosages every time, and I just did that. So I stopped logging everything, so I didn't have that, you know, mental stress, if you want to call it like that, of having to be there and logging everything all the time. And that allowed me to decompress a bit, to say, all right, I mean, life is normal. It can be normal. Of course, sorry about that, about the noise. Of course, if I did that and then I started, you know, to eat cakes and eat pizzas and all those kinds of food, it would have become a nightmare, because my blood glucose will be simply uncontrollable. I choose not to do that. I choose to eat simple foods, foods that I love to eat, of course, at the condition that those would not have to screw up my blood glucose. And I could do that because I know what is, you know, my goal long term, and it was not a problem for me to stick to the process. Yes, it's still a performance to some extent, but you know, You could say, oh, I want to be 99% time in range all the time.
I see.
Or you can say, all right, I mean, it's okay even if I miss, you know, a couple of days. If for a couple of days I'm, I don't know, 80% in range, you allow some, like, a margin for, you know, failure. You are less strict with yourself, but still knowing that there is a process that you're following, and that there is a long-term purpose that you are that you have in your mind, that you have like an horizon that you are always aiming at, and that keeps you disciplined. So yeah, I mean, type 1 diabetes, I mean, it's a weird condition, because it's not one of those conditions that, you know, diminish you or really put you in a bad condition on a daily basis, because there are people with, you know, without a leg, without, you know, with that are physically impaired. So with type 1 diabetes, you can still technically live a normal life from an aesthetic point of view, a physical point of view, but on the inside you have all these things to take care of that are unseen by other people, which is okay. You just have to give yourself the mental space to process them, and to first accept the condition, and second to, you know, say, all right, I have a clear purpose in my life. My life purpose is to be healthy long term. Health for me is the first one. I do not compromise on it for no reason. So you have to have a purpose and align each action to that purpose. And once that purpose is clear, then aligning the action is not, you know, that much of a struggle. Yeah, I mean, to me it's really simple. You just need to accept it to be all right. You know, diabetes can be your worst enemy, or it can be your best friend. I chose the second option, considering diabetes my best friend, because it helps me to understand my body to a degree that I was not able before, because I know how foods impact me. I know, you know, the effect, for example, of insulin resistance, a concept that is largely misunderstood and not really evaluated by people, even without diabetes. It's very underestimated. So it allowed me to really get on top of my health to such a degree that I'm now like a scientist of myself. I understand my body, my organism much deeply, on a much deeper level. It requires discipline. There is no way around that, but it doesn't require you to be mentally ill due to that discipline. You just need to automate everything, simplify things. I simplify my diet by eating always the same kinds of food, not always the same things, but the same kinds of food that I know are optimal for my blood glucose management. And to me, those are whole foods, plant-based, that are, you know, high in carbohydrates naturally, and low in fat. I eat tons of fruit, I eat greens, and I know those help me a great deal, because I barely have to recalculate my dosages. I know what my ratios are. I know how my body absorbs that kind of nutrition, so I don't really need to, you know, make new decisions every day. I know the process. I know how food impacts on my health. and I just use those foods as you know, my key to unlock long-term health, but without compromising my mental health in the process. So I just make it very simple. I eat foods that increase my insulin sensitivity. I move a lot, I sleep a lot, and I take mental breaks, stress management. Those are for me the pillars of living life with type 1 diabetes as a performance, but being in control of the performance and not being a victim of it. Yeah, so those are my 2 cents. I hope this will help you, or maybe, I don't know, give you some new perspective on managing this condition. And well, I wish you a very nice day.